Today, we're going to tell some San Antonio ghost stories. And keep watching to hear Alyse's encounter with the ghost lady behind the window. It's a true ghost story.
It happened. Okay, this is our Halloween edition. So we're not going to be talking real estate, but if you happen to have any questions about real estate, please feel free to reach out to us. Our information's in the description.
That's right. Please feel free to call, text us, or email us, even if you want verification on some of these ghost stories we're going to tell.
There's no verification.
So San Antonio ghost stories, they have a long tradition in San Antonio. And obviously, San Antonio is a very old city, but with the Battle of the Alamo and things like that, downtown is very haunted. And other places, we've been on TV shows about hauntings and ghost sightings and that kind of thing. So it's kind of a cool part of the culture to dig into. And obviously, this time of year is when those kind of stories come out the most. Wouldn't you say?
Well, of course, it's Halloween time. Okay, so let's get started. Jay, why don't you start with one of the classics?
So this is an old school story about the ghost tracks, and it's the railroad tracks on the south side of town. And so there's a bunch of different versions of it that I've heard over the years, but the one that I like the best is, so there was a nun driving a school bus, and I don't know if the kids were orphans or whatever, and they got stuck on these tracks, and the train was coming, and the nun couldn't get all the kids off and all this kind of stuff. So the train hits the school bus, and a bunch of the kids pass away, or all of them, I don't know the body count or anything like that. But the nun was very distraught that she had killed all these kids. She ended up driving her car onto the tracks, and she was just going to let the train kill her like she thought it should have done that night. And as the train approaches, the story goes that the kids that she took care of, the ghosts of these children pushed her off the tracks. So she was safely on the other side when the train went by. And this astonished her, and she saw little handprints on the back. And then she realized that the kids were trying to save her because she should have a bigger purpose. So she went on to stay in the orphanage, kind of giving back and doing the things that she should have done with her life because of the kids and all that. The ghost tracks have kind of been closed over the years because of railroading issues. But basically, for years and years, people would go over there and you'd get your car on the tracks where all this happened, and the kids would push you over the tracks, and it looked like you're kind of getting pushed uphill. And then the next thing you know, you're on the other side and you're downhill. And so over the years, people have done this. I'm sure you've had experience with it, right?
Yeah, and the big thing was to put baby powder in the back of your bumper or the trunk, and little fingerprints would be there after you got pushed over.
Yeah, and there's even, I don't know, again, how true all that is, but the neighborhood that's by the ghost tracks, the names of kids are all the street names. So it's like Cindy Sue and Bobby Joe and Laura Lee. And supposedly those are names of some of the kids that were killed during the accident on the ghost tracks. So like we mentioned with the Battle of the Alamo, there was a lot of ghost stories and things that revolve around downtown San Antonio. So in fact, we're going to list off the top 12 haunted hotels that are in the downtown area and mention some of the experiences we've had over the years with these things.
So at number 12, it's the Omni La Mansión del Rio, which is right on the river. The Hotel Gibbs, the Holiday Inn Express in the old county jail.
So I definitely want to jump in there because the Holiday Inn Express was built on top of the old Bexar County Jail. And this jail was from the late 1800s or something like that, where they used to have like a hangman for the executions there. So they had a hangman's quarters on the third floor or something like that. Anyway, people say they can sometimes see apparitions, like they're hanging outside the windows, just floating there with the noose. And then other people have reported items just getting pulled out of their hands or knocked out of their hands or grabbed from their hands. So that's a cool and eerie one because that would be bad guy criminals of the old days that are ghosting around there.
Yeah, that's a spooky one. Next one is the Crockett Hotel. Next one, Hotel Indigo. Number 7 is the St. Anthony Hotel.
We've been there several times, but one time in particular, we got to talking with some of the staff and the front desk people, and they were telling us about the ghost of a little girl that patrols the hallways there. And she's like the main ghost, but she's kind of a nice ghost. And there's even a guy that they told us that goes there 2-3 times a year because he's like a paranormal scientist of some sort. So he goes to study the ghost. And apparently he's hung out with that little girl. And it's enough for him to come back multiple times to do that. So that's kind of another cool little story.
Yeah.
So obviously number 6, the Gunter Hotel. Tell us about that one.
Yeah. So the Gunther Hotel, actually, we've spent a lot of time in there. I used to walk through that hotel all the time. We got to know some people there, but there's a story room 636, and it actually is walled off now. So you can't even stay in that room anymore. Apparently there was a murder of a young blonde lady, and it was a gruesome murder. So she's in there. And apparently anybody that stayed in that room would get too spooked out because too many crazy things would happen and they would bolt. So now that room is walled off. So that was pretty spooky. But we've heard other ones where there's just a lot of activity there.
Next on the list is the Marriott Plaza down on Alamo Street. Then the Emily Morgan Hotel right there in the heart of downtown by the Alamo.
Yeah, so the Emily Morgan, there's a lot of things that happen there. There's phones ringing. One time, one of the overnight managers was spending the night, and she went to dinner, came back, and her tub was full of blue water. People that take pictures in the hotel, there's orbs everywhere. So it's just a lot of random things that happen there at the Emily Morgan.
And you've got the Crown Plaza downtown, the Bullis House Inn, which is right there by the entry of Fort Sam, kind of like right at the edge of the gate. So I'm sure there's some old war stories with that place as well. And then obviously the Menger Hotel right downtown. And that's a super old hotel with a big, rich history. People that have stayed there like Teddy Roosevelt and stuff like that. But one of the famous people that kind of ended up living there for a while was Richard King of the King Ranch. So he actually had a suite built there. And I guess basically it's kind of like 2 rooms nowadays with the wall in between, but the wall used to have his doorway. And apparently he died suddenly there in the hotel. So he's still haunted. And people say they can see him all the time floating between the rooms, basically living in the suite that he used to live in. And I think there was also a maid that was killed there by her husband. And people can see the apparition of the maid with the bonnet and the outfits that they used to wear working there. And sometimes I'll ask her for something and she'll like disappear when you approach her or something like that. But yeah, there's a lot of haunted areas, sightings near downtown. And it's really cool around this time of year. Like we've done the haunted tours. We did a walking tour that one time with the old man that just told stories, but he had a real squeaky voice and one of those weird old canes. So he kind of made it cool.
Yeah.
And then we actually did another one year where they took us through downtown. I think were we on a carriage or something? And then they took us to one of the old cemeteries that's still near downtown and talked about some of the ghost stories there. But it started with the hotel tours right there by the Alamo and then to the cemetery. So there's good stuff to do like that if you're into ghost stories and history too.
Anywhere around there, there's all sorts of stuff that happens.
Speaking of ghost and downtown, this is where we kind of get into Alyse's encounter with the lady behind the window, right? Tell us about that.
So we were at a wedding rehearsal dinner at the hotel right next door to where I saw her. And we were leaving the hotel.
And just for the record, I was not there.
He was not there. So we were leaving the hotel and we are downtown, right where all of these hotels are. And there was a bar that had been closed, like it was out of business. So it's all dark in there, but it's all windows from one side of the bar to the end of the street. So as we're walking, I just kept hearing this. And I was walking with 2 of the guys that were in the wedding. And I was like, I hear banging. And they're like, we do too. And we're looking around and I looked right to the left of me and I said, oh my gosh, there's a lady in the window. You could tell that she was furious and screaming, but I couldn't hear her. I could just hear the banging. And they were like, what are you talking about? I'm like, she's right there, literally 3 feet from me. And they said, well, we hear the banging, but we don't see anything.
So they heard the banging, but they didn't see the lady.
Yes.
What did the lady look like?
She was short. She had long, scraggly hair. She was really skinny. She looked gray. She looked like a skeleton. So I'm freaking out. And I'm like, well, she's right there and she's very upset. So we keep walking and they're like, we don't know. We don't see her. And they just keep walking. And I'm like, well, that's kind of weird that they don't believe me or they don't see her or what. Anyhow, we keep walking and the wedding party was going to a bar down the street from where we were. And I sat down and I knew what I saw. I freaked out and I was like, okay, guys, I'm calling it a night. For some reason, it didn't bother those guys. I had to go home and figure out what was going on in my head. We'll figure out what I saw, but I saw it and it happened and it scared the bejesus out of me.
And then to add some credibility to the story, it was an old vacant bar at that point, like she said, and it really was like dusty old windows and really nothing to see inside. This was years later that it had opened back up and had become a thriving bar again. We happened to be in there having a drink and talked to the bartender, and she mentioned the ghost or something like that. And the bartender said, yeah, she's crazy, isn't she? And then Alyse was like, see, I didn't even say it was a she. They know it's a she.
Yes. And they said, yes, there's been many encounters because of the buildings, they're old. And so they were all built higher. So there's different levels to the bar. They said every time they would go to the second floor, things would get crazy. So it happened. Okay, guys, thank you for listening to our ghost stories. And hey, if you want to chat about a ghost story, feel free to reach out to us. If you want to talk about real estate, our information's in the description.
That's right. Please feel free to call, text us, or email us with your ghost questions, your ghost stories, and or your real estate questions.
I don't know if we can answer the questions, but
but we'll listen.
Yeah.
Thanks again for watching. Enjoy the Halloween festivities and all it has to offer in and around San Antonio. And as we like to say,
keep Boston weird.
Keep San Antonio cool.